Kimcho, and welcome to weekly market analysis for the Indian markets for the week of March 27th. My name is Brandon Wendell, Chartered Market Technician, and I'm going to guide you through what I'm seeing on the markets in the Nifty and Bank Nifty as well for this week. So, looking at the monthly chart, it looks like we were very successful popping off of this monthly demand zone, as you can see, at 15,962, 15,513. A lot of bullish pressure popping out of there. And we lost our momentum, so that's kind of why we pulled back a little bit. But it was still a bullish market. It still continues to be bullish, looking like we're going to continue to go to the upside. Dropping down to the weekly chart, now we're seeing a slightly different picture. While we were very bullish and even hitting an area of demand, it looks like right here as well. Let's see. It doesn't quite qualify as well as it did on the monthly. But regardless, we did bounce off that. We're running into a little bit of weakness now. As you can see, prices had dropped, based a little bit, and dropped in the past. So it's a very wide zone compared to the move down. But the troubling part is that move down did take us to prior lows. So here we are pushing into that on the weekly picture again. Last week saw selling pressures. We approached that area, and we still could not get above 60, just like we couldn't on our previous high. So we're going to make a lower high here most likely, which means I would expect before the end of the week that we may take out the last week low of 17,006.3. So looking at a little bit of bearishness there as we're looking at this market. Fine tuning this a little more into the daily time frame, you can see indecision. We're back and forth, alternating red and green candles. That's a lot of weakness. And again, we cannot seem to get above 60. Without getting above 60, you tend to make lower highs, and if you go below 40, you make lower lows. So watch as we pull back this week. It looks like we're going to be in for either sideways or downward movement. I don't have any quality zones nearby here, so we'll look at the individual stocks and make up the Nifty to help us out there. But overall, this is looking pretty weak, and there's not much to hold us up. We're dropping all the way down. Now, there may be some pauses along the way. If I bring in my Fibonacci retracements, you can see we have some possible pausing points. One, just before the low, the previous low that we saw on the dailies, weeklies at 17,042. So we may bounce just a little bit there before we go through the prior low of 17,006. And could end up seeing much more lower lows as we go down to 795, 16,595, and so on to the downside. If we drop down to a 4-hour time frame to see, there's really not much help. The only really good demand zone that we once had has already been used, and that was right here. We had a drop base rally that was already tested, and therefore it could still give us a little bit of a bounce with the Fibonacci backing us up, but overall, this is looking pretty grim. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing a whole lot of motion to push us higher. If for some reason there is some bullish pressure that picks up, and honestly, the longer you go sideways like this, the more likely you are to break to the upside. Well, if we do, there's overhead supply almost immediately at about 586. So not like we're going to go very far, but we could possibly bounce a little bit before we start pushing back down again. But overall, this looked pretty bearish, to be honest with you. We can go out to Reliance, the big player on the Nifty, and kind of take a look and see what's going on there. I'm going to clean up my chart from my previous analysis. Let's go to a daily time frame. Actually, I'll go to weekly first. And on the weekly, we did break out of prior highs. Not only did we do that, but we've actually gone above 60 on the RSI. So this has been a shining star kind of guiding the Nifty higher. The problem is we just saw an elongated candle after we broke out of in the same direction we were already moving, breaking out of a prior high. And the death knell for this would be if we have a spike in volume. So let's take a look real quick to see. And if we take a look at the volume on that candle, there wasn't really a spike in volume, but there was an increase in volume over the previous week. And it is a little bit higher than the average. So typically when that happens, where you have that large candle after a move up and you break out of highs, that's what we call a novice candle. And the novices are jumping in, trying to propel prices higher. That usually leads to a pullback or the end of the trend. So we started moving up because we had hit, you can see a weekly demand zone there. So we're bouncing up. This is likely to come back either to the breakout point, or a lot of times these novice candles come back all the way to the beginning of the candle, which would be 24.44. So keep an eye out for that. Additionally, we're actually at supply anyway, because you see on the weekly chart here, rally, base, base, drop. So we're just shy of that supply at 26, 27, 40. So keep an eye out for that. If I go down to the 4 hour, I'm sorry, I want to go to daily first, not skip time frames. But going to the daily, you see that is a shooting star formation where we gapped up and we ended up with a big topping tail. It's like an inverted hammer, basically. So if we gap down on Monday, then that would be a shooting star. If we don't gap down, it's inverted hammer. Either way, it's bearish. But we're not going to make a fresh low without a bounce. So what'll happen if we start pulling back from that inverted hammers, we'll hit this area of demand first at 24.84 to 24.39. You got rally, base, and rally. So that's our first target as we start moving down, because we're above 60, so we're not going to make a new low. And that's pretty close to the origin of that candle that we just saw on the weekly, right, for the Novice Candle. So that's basically you wipe out some of those people that jumped in late before continuing higher. So expect some weakness possibly coming in this week. The clear sign will be depending on where we open. And if we open below 25.77, which is where we had that low, then that's a shooting star, and that's more bearish. If we open inside of this candle from Friday, then it's just an inverted hammer. We probably won't move down as quickly. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the markets. HDFC Bank, I'll go to the weekly chart there as well. Not doing as well. You can see lower highs, lower lows, getting a lot more weakness here than we were seeing in Reliance. So Reliance has been pulling us up. HDFC dragging us down a bit. Looking at the daily chart, yeah, we made that peak, could not get above 60. That's very bearish, actually. So we're likely to test that 1325 area of demand. You can see all the way back down where we're possibly going this week. We might stall out a little bit here first. You got a drop, base, and rally at 1408, but ultimately I think we could test 1334 this week. Just kind of looking back, if we do break that, there's really not much until the 1200 level. Could get pretty bearish, and that obviously would weigh down the Nifty quite a bit. Infosys. Take a look at that. We had a little descending wedge, ended up breaking to the upside of that formation last time I looked at that, and now we're in consolidation again. And not really surprised, because you see that previous high that, whoops, did the wrong candle there, the wrong tool. There we go. You can see this consolidation that's happening in price. That actually usually leads to continuation. Oops, sorry, dogs are barking in the background here. So consolidation, let me get this right. There it is. The consolidation usually leads to a continuation, which is actually a bit bullish for Infosys and for the Nifty. But if it gets dragged down, you see momentum has died off, so it may get just pushed sideways a little bit instead of dragging or moving to the upside. And then ICICI, very, very weak. You can see that clearly looking at this. I'll go to the weekly for a moment, then back to this daily. Yeah, not seeing much here. Looks as though we may end up pulling back towards this weekly demand at 611, because there's just nothing here. We've broken it. Well, the only good thing is we didn't go below 40 yet, but if we break 40, we're definitely getting down to 611 easily. And let's go down to the daily time frame to fine tune this a little more. Definite weakness going on. I don't really see much going right on this. Our initial downside target, drop base. No, actually, it's both basic candles. It doesn't work. It's not a zone. So I might have to go into a smaller time frame to find some sort of a zone, but there's really nothing here to hold us up. As of right now, we've had kind of an impulse correction, and we are currently impulsing back down. And look at that, 617 is right above the 611 demand zone as our possible target as we're continuing to move down. So you'd have to go into smaller time frames perhaps to find a good supply zone to enter for short. And I don't really see one right now, so just be careful out there. And then lastly, I'll just do the top 5. HDFC, I'll go to the weekly. And on that weekly chart, bearishness. So really, Reliance has been the only thing taking us higher. Seriously? Let me see, TCS. Nope, that's not it. Kotak Bank? Nope. L&T? No, everything's very weak. It's just Reliance, and we've been pulled up by one stock. I mean, yes, it's a big stock, but overall, I think that the supports are going to start falling. ITC, that's the other one that actually went a little higher. That's still bullish. That's holding off everything, but overall, I see us potentially moving to the downside on the Nifty, as I mentioned. So let's go to the Bank Nifty. And under index, what happened here? There we go. So Bank Nifty, I've got some analysis from previous studies we did there. You can see we were at a demand zone and bounced. The nice thing was we bounced by staying above 40, which is bullish, but we didn't go very far, did we? You can see we just rallied up to some previous selling pressure here, and we can't get above 60. So overall, Bank Nifty is pretty bearish. Really, we saw some of the big banks, Kotak, ICICI, HDFC, they're all pretty weak as well. So not really surprising to see this looking pretty weak overall and likely to continue to the downside. Really, there's not much demand here on the, what are we on, weekly? There's no weekly demand until way, way down. Now, I don't see that happening very soon, 24,809, but there's nothing else here, really. That's a little unnerving, I should say. We go to the daily time frame and everything, again, still looks pretty bearish. We couldn't get into bullish territory to break out the new highs. You see, when you make these highs, RSI goes above 60, but when you don't, that's where things are going down. So we do have this area of demand on our way down. And that doesn't qualify as a good demand zone. So I would say that 33,263 is the first downside target. Maybe if I go to the 4-hour chart, I don't really see much difference, but there might be a little bit of demand right here. Drop base rally for the beginning of the week, 34,546. As far as overhead supply, we also don't really have much of anything either. So a lot of gapping, a lot of choppiness. So I don't really have anything solid as far as good entry spots. Just got to pick your battles, even going into smaller time frames like 60 minutes or less, and just look for opportunities where you see the rally-based drops or drop-based drops, areas of good solid supply that have not formed yet. We just don't have them yet. So we do have a good demand zone here, I believe. A rally, a drop base rally, and then try to see if there's anything else along the way. Yeah, there is. Right here, we're coming close to this 60-minute demand. 34,706, 35,032. And as far as overhead supply, like I said, it hasn't really formed anything great. We had the gap there, but that didn't really make a good zone. So be very, very cautious. But overall, looking somewhat bearish on the banks. So that's what I've got for you. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you again soon. Until next time, trade safe, trade well, and take care.